Entertainment headlines this week from the Kelly Clarkson show ending to Sherri Shepherd's show being canceled.
She says it's for personal reasons. She needs to focus on her kids. She's been saying this for about 2 years now.
Everything looked perfect for Kelly Clarkson. Her talk show was winning awards, attracting loyal viewers, and showing no obvious signs of trouble. Yet, behind the success, a decision was quietly taking shape that would leave fans stunned and spark serious questions. Now, as Kelly prepares to say goodbye to one of the biggest chapters of her career, many are wondering what really pushed her to walk away. Was this simply a personal choice? Or is there far more to the story than anyone realizes? The goodbye nobody saw coming. For years, Kelly Clarkson seemed to have accomplished something few television personalities ever manage. She had successfully transformed from a chart-topping singer to a beloved daytime host, building a program that connected with viewers and earned industry recognition along the way. From the outside, everything appeared stable. The show was attracting attention, collecting awards, and continuing to grow its audience. There were no obvious signs that a major change was approaching. That is precisely why her announcement landed with such force. When news emerged that Clarkson had decided to step away from her daytime talk show, the reaction was immediate. Many fans struggled to understand what they were hearing. In an industry where successful programs often fight to remain on the air for as long as possible, walking away from a winning formula seemed unexpected. Questions quickly followed. Why now? What had changed? And why would someone leave when the show appeared to be thriving? The timing only deepened the mystery. Viewers had watched Clarkson build the program into a respected part of daytime television. Her personality, humor, and openness had become central to its appeal. Because of that success, many assumed the future of the show was secure. Instead, they were suddenly confronted with the possibility that one of television's most familiar faces was preparing to close an important chapter of her career. As public discussion intensified, different interpretations began to emerge. Some wondered whether unseen pressures existed behind the scenes. Others questioned whether the demands of balancing multiple professional responsibilities had finally become too much. The absence of an obvious explanation created space for speculation. Yet the more people looked at the situation, the more unusual it seemed. This was not a story about a struggling program searching for answers. It was a story about a successful one facing an ending few had predicted. That contrast became impossible to ignore. Success is usually expected to create stability, not uncertainty. Yet Clarkson's decision appeared to challenge that assumption. The stronger the show seemed from the outside, the harder it became for observers to understand why she would choose to leave it behind. What should have been a straightforward announcement instead became the beginning of a larger conversation. The growing confusion surrounding the decision transformed a simple farewell into something far more compelling. Beneath the headlines was a question that remained unanswered, a gap between public success and personal choice that nobody could fully explain. And as attention continued to build, it became increasingly clear that the real story was not the goodbye itself, but the reason it had become necessary at all. For many observers, that uncertainty became the most striking detail. Rather than providing closure, the announcement opened questions, encouraging audiences to look beyond ratings and headlines and consider what might have been unfolding privately. Why would Kelly Clarkson walk away when everything seems to be thriving? What is happening behind the scenes? And who or what is pushing this unexpected decision forward as something far deeper begins to surface? Keep watching. Success made the mystery deeper. As the initial shock of Kelly Clarkson's announcement began to settle, a different question started to take center stage. If she was truly leaving her daytime talk show, what exactly had gone wrong? For many viewers, the answer seemed obvious at first. Television history is filled with programs that disappear because ratings decline, audiences lose interest, or networks decide to move in a different direction. But the deeper people looked into Clarkson's situation, the harder it became to fit her story into that familiar pattern. The reality appeared to point in the opposite direction. Her show was not struggling to survive. It had become one of the most successful projects of her television career. Over the years, The Kelly Clarkson Show had earned widespread praise and established itself as a major presence in daytime television. Industry recognition followed, including multiple Emmy Awards, further strengthening its reputation. Rather than showing signs of weakness, the program seemed to be operating from a position of strength. That success created an unexpected problem. Instead of helping people understand her decision, it made the announcement even more difficult to explain. Viewers could understand a farewell driven by failure. What they could not easily understand was why someone would step away from something that appeared to be working so well. Every achievement associated with the show seemed to raise another question rather than provide an answer. Public reaction reflected that growing confusion. Supporters expressed sadness, but many also expressed genuine disbelief. Some wondered whether important details remained hidden from public view. Others searched for clues that might explain why such a successful chapter was suddenly coming to an end. The more attention the story received, the more apparent it became that ratings and awards were unlikely to be the real issue. Clarkson herself added another layer to the mystery. Rather than pointing toward professional setbacks, she repeatedly emphasized that the show was doing well. Her comments challenged the most common assumptions surrounding departures in television. There was no indication that the audience had disappeared. There was no suggestion that the program had lost momentum. In fact, her remarks seemed designed to make one thing clear: the decision was not being driven by the show's performance. That clarification changed the entire conversation. Once the possibility of failure was removed, attention shifted elsewhere. Observers began looking beyond studio lights, audience applause, and award ceremonies. The focus slowly moved toward the possibility that factors outside the show itself had become impossible to ignore. What initially appeared to be a professional decision now seemed connected to something much more personal. By this point, the story was no longer about whether The Kelly Clarkson Show was successful. That question had largely been answered. The real mystery centered on why success itself had not been enough to keep one of daytime television's biggest stars from choosing to walk away. What happens when success isn't the problem? Why would a hit show still face an ending nobody expected? And what unseen pressure was building behind the scenes that no one saw coming? And why now? Let's find out. When everything quietly changed forever. As questions continued to surround Kelly Clarkson's decision to leave her daytime talk show, a more revealing picture slowly began to emerge. The discussion was no longer focused on ratings, awards, or professional success. Those explanations had largely been ruled out. Instead, attention started shifting towards something far less visible, but far more significant. Behind the cameras and public appearances, changes had been taking place in Clarkson's personal life that were beginning to reshape the way she viewed everything around her. For years, she had managed to balance multiple roles at once. She was a successful singer, a television host, a public figure, and most importantly, a mother. From the outside, she appeared to move seamlessly between those responsibilities. Audiences saw the polished performances and energetic interviews, but they did not necessarily see the constant demands required to maintain that pace. Like many people balancing work and family, she carried responsibilities that extended far beyond what appeared on television screens. Over time, however, circumstances within her family began to change. The dynamic that had once allowed her to manage so many commitments started becoming more complicated. These were not sudden problems that appeared overnight. Instead, they seemed to develop gradually, creating pressures that became harder to ignore. What may have once felt manageable was beginning to require a different kind of attention, forcing difficult questions about priorities and time. That shift introduced a level of emotional tension that could not be measured by ratings reports or industry recognition. Professional success often creates the impression that everything is under control, but personal realities do not always follow the same script. As family responsibilities grew more demanding, the gap between public expectations and private needs appeared to widen. The challenge was no longer about maintaining a successful show. It was about determining how much of herself she could realistically give to every part of her life. Clarkson's own comments offered important clues. When speaking about the decision, she pointed toward changes within her family rather than problems within the show. Those remarks suggested that the factors influencing her future existed beyond the studio walls. They also hinted at a deeper reevaluation that had likely been taking place long before the public learned about her departure. What seemed sudden to viewers may have been the result of a much longer internal process. That realization added a new layer to the story. Instead of a career-focused controversy, the narrative began transforming into something more personal and relatable. The central conflict was no longer about television at all. It was about competing responsibilities, limited time, and the difficult choices that emerge when life takes an unexpected turn. And as that reality became clearer, it became increasingly evident that Kelly Clarkson's goodbye was connected to something much larger than a simple career decision. Something that would soon redefine the entire conversation surrounding her future. But behind the shifting spotlight, how much was Kelly truly carrying? What was happening inside her home life that no one saw? And why did everything suddenly begin to change at once? Stay glued. The loss that changed everything. As Kelly Clarkson's departure became clearer, the story shifted from a routine career decision into something more personal and emotionally complex. What first looked like a surprising professional move began to reveal deeper layers tied to her private life. The focus moved away from television success, ratings, and industry expectations and toward circumstances unfolding behind the scenes that the public could not fully see. One of the most significant developments came after the death of Brandon Blackstock, her ex-husband and father of her two children, River and Remington. His passing from cancer introduced a reality that could not be balanced easily with a demanding public career. While audiences still saw her hosting on screen, her private world had already changed in ways that required greater responsibility at home. For viewers, the announcement of her show's ending came as a shock, but behind that moment was a growing emotional weight. Clarkson had long emphasized family values, but her children now became the center of a shifting reality that demanded more of her attention. River and Remington were no longer just part of her identity, but the foundation of her daily priorities. As those responsibilities increased, sustaining the same professional pace became harder. A daytime television show requires constant preparation, production planning, meetings, and ongoing commitments beyond what appears on screen. For someone navigating major family changes, this was no longer a simple scheduling issue, but a matter of priorities that could not be ignored. Clarkson's own reflections highlighted this tension. Instead of focusing on career frustration, she spoke more about family and the importance of time. Her perspective suggested an understanding that some moments in life cannot be postponed or regained later, especially for parents who view success differently from public expectations. The situation also challenged traditional ideas of success. From the outside, many expected a thriving television host to continue as before, but personal loss often changes how people evaluate life. What once felt manageable can shift significantly under grief, responsibility, and change, altering priorities in ways not visible to the public. By this point, the narrative had shifted into something far more human than a simple career update. The farewell appeared less like a professional decision and more like the result of profound personal change. It became clear that much of her struggle had taken place away from public view, shaping a story the audience could not fully see. How does life continue when everything changes overnight? Who steps in when responsibility becomes impossible to carry alone? And how far can someone be pushed before breaking? Stay tuned. The choice no one expected. By the time Kelly Clarkson publicly addressed the reasons behind her decision, the story had moved beyond television. What looked like a surprising career change was revealing itself as something more personal. Questions about ratings, awards, and professional success faded into the background, replaced by a deeper issue centered on time, family, and difficult choices that surface when life forces a reassessment of priorities. For years, Clarkson built a career of momentum, balancing music, television, and public appearances while maintaining a strong bond with her audience. She appeared to have mastered doing it all. Her daytime talk show remained successful, and her popularity held steady. Yet, beneath that surface of achievement, another reality was forming, one not measured by ratings or awards. As family circumstances evolved, Clarkson began to view her responsibilities through a different lens. She became increasingly aware of how quickly time passes, especially for parents. Unlike professional opportunities, certain moments with children cannot be postponed or repeated. Once they pass, they are gone forever. That realization appeared to carry growing emotional weight as she considered what her future should look like. The emotional conflict became more visible as observers looked closer. Walking away from a successful show was never an easy decision. Clarkson acknowledged how difficult it had been, especially because the program was performing well and had many people connected to it. The crew, staff, and television family represented relationships built over years. Leaving them behind was not done lightly. At the same time, continuing on the same path brought its own pressures. A daily television schedule demands constant energy and attention. For someone navigating major personal changes, maintaining that pace indefinitely may have become increasingly difficult. The decision seemed less like a desire to leave and more like an acknowledgement that something had to change. Some saw the move as a major career shift, while others viewed it as a shift in priorities. Both interpretations pointed to the same reality. Clarkson stood at a crossroads where professional success and personal life were competing for the same limited resource: time. That tension gave the decision its emotional weight. It was not driven by failure, controversy, or a lack of opportunity. Instead, it came from the recognition that certain parts of life deserve attention exactly when they are most needed, even if that means stepping away from something familiar. As this understanding grew clearer over time, her departure looked less like an ending and more like a deeply personal turning point that would quietly shape everything that came next in her life moving ahead. With everything hanging in the balance, was this truly her breaking point, or something deeper unfolding behind the scenes? And how did those closest to her respond when everything began shifting unexpectedly. Stay with us. A farewell filled with questions. As Kelly Clarkson's decision became clearer, attention naturally shifted toward a new question. If this chapter is ending, what would come next? After weeks of discussion surrounding her departure from daytime television, many fans were still trying to process the reality that one of the most successful periods of her career was coming to a close. Yet, even as the goodbye dominated headlines, Clarkson made it clear that she was not disappearing. In many ways, that reassurance only added another layer of curiosity to an already emotional story. Throughout the conversation surrounding her exit, Clarkson repeatedly emphasized that she was not stepping away from work entirely. She reminded audiences that she still had other professional commitments and creative ambitions. Music remained a major part of her identity, and she openly suggested that fans would continue seeing her in different ways moving forward. Those comments offered comfort to supporters concerned about her future, but they did not completely answer the questions surrounding what that future would actually look like. The uncertainty became part of the story itself. For years, viewers had grown accustomed to seeing Clarkson on television almost every day. Her talk show had become more than a successful program. It had become a familiar presence in the lives of many audience members. The thought of that routine suddenly changing created a sense of unease. Even with promises of future projects, there was no clear roadmap explaining exactly where her career would go next. That lack of certainty sparked different interpretations. Some believed she would eventually return to television in a different format. Others suspected that music would once again become her primary focus. There were also those who viewed this moment less as a career shift and more as a personal reset, a chance to rebuild priorities after a period of profound change. None of those possibilities could be confirmed, but together they reflected the growing curiosity surrounding her next move. What made the situation especially compelling was the fact that the farewell did not resemble a typical departure. There was no public failure to explain it. There was no dramatic cancellation forcing an ending. Instead, a highly successful entertainer appeared to be voluntarily stepping away from something that was still working. That reality transformed the goodbye into something larger than a routine television transition. For many fans, the emotional impact came from the realization that an entire era was coming to a close. The Kelly Clarkson they had come to know as a daytime television host was stepping into a new stage of her career, even if no one yet knew exactly what that stage would become. Her decision closed one door while leaving several others partially open for future possibilities. And as the spotlight slowly shifted from what she was leaving behind toward where she might go next, the story remained unfinished, shaped by uncertainty and possibility. It is a narrative still unfolding, defined less by endings and more by transitions, questions, and the lingering sense that her most defining chapter may still lie ahead for her next. So, what do you think? Was Kelly Clarkson right to walk away despite massive success? Or is there more behind this shocking exit? Share your thoughts in the comments below. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more.